And I'm able to hold space really beautifully and powerfully without taking on people's stuff, but just fully being with them and for them. And that is a beautiful space to occupy. And I think it's rare air, you know, and if I can help others.
Welcome to the Let's Not Sugarcoat It podcast,
where every week we bring you real, raw, and unfiltered conversations
designed to motivate and inspire you on your journey through motherhood, relationships, and career.
We're your hosts, Alex
and Bella.
Thanks for spending this time with us.
Let's get into it.
Welcome. Okay, today we have Pam Rader in the house. So Pam is the founder of Shift Labs, Shift Power Yoga, and the author of the best-selling memoir, Through the Cracks. She's a coach and leadership development facilitator who believes in a heart-led approach to transformation. In addition to bringing some street cred to the table by navigating healing her life while loving her son through a harrowing decade-long. See, Bella said she was going to mess that word up. Now I did. Harrowing decade-long heroin addiction. Pam is known for her unique and powerful strategies that blend her background in spiritual study with her extensive study in personal development and coaching. Her highest vision is to lead people to a deeper connection, more peace, and the fulfillment that arises from living authentically. Welcome, Pam.
Welcome.
Thank you,
so
ladies.
Nice to have you in studio. I mean, we've seen you talk a couple of times and it's so empowering and moving. And yeah, I just love your story of triumph and letting go and just loving.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do tell us a little bit more.
Just jump right in.
Yeah, jump right in. Oh gosh, where should I start? Well, firstly, I'd like to just say that sharing our stories is the way that we heal humanity. And yet so many of us are busy trying to curate these perfect looking lives and hide behind societal norms and hide our shame. But it was really, for me, the most transformative process that I've ever been through was just having a platform to share my story, dissolve the shame around it, and then feel the healing that came from that. So I'm on a mission to help people overcome shame and be able to dive in and share their stories powerfully, because I believe that stories are the medicine. I think it's a lost art in society, the gift of storytelling, you know, and sharing our trials and triumphs as a lighthouse for others to follow through their own journeys.
Yeah, my therapist said, I bet you're a very great storyteller.
Well, there you go.
Because, the way, you talk about your trauma, the way I talk to her, I've never talked to anybody else because there is that shame and blame and all that kind of stuff that goes with it. And it is quite freeing. And I do, believe that healing does come through sharing. And I've been on a healing journey for the last few months. And I don't know. I've been telling everybody that I know it's winter's coming and we're in hibernation, but right now I'm in spring. So I feel very much alive. I feel like I weathered the storm and now spring is here and my flowers are about to bloom. That's why I got a tattoo. I have a new tattoo that says no rain, no flowers. And it goes along my spine. And it's spring for me, baby.
Nice for you. Nice.
But if I didn't go through those dark, deep places and I didn't share with my family and friends, I don't think I would have been able to get through what I've been going through the last, year, I'm going to say beginning of the year. So I do really believe that it's through the sharing and our stories that we do find healing. And
Yeah. And I mean, I got to say, like, when you were just talking about your goal for sharing your story, I just read your book this weekend and I feel like you really nailed your goal. Like in the beginning of your book, when you're just like so many parts where you're talking about your shame or the blame, as mothers, we put on ourselves for like the things that have happened. And I just felt like that mom guilt and shame in that. And then in the last part, just the way how you talk about, and we've talked about this here before, about changing the narrative and the story to be about what life is teaching you and that it's happening to you and not for you. And just like the transformation. And it was a very inspiring story. And it did exactly what you just said there a minute ago about how, the shame and helping people learn, and then just the light on the other side of getting to like letting go of that. It was powerful.
Thank you. Yeah, it was, for a long time, I kind of hid that. I was like, how does somebody as smart and strong and capable as me wind up in a marriage like I did with this guy? And then who's, abusive and nasty, and there's addiction and all of that. And there was this kind of dichotomy happening because I was like, that only happens to weak people. And so now I need to hide that because I'm not weak. It was such a strange thing. I wouldn't have told you that I was ashamed at the time. I would have told you that I was strong, Yeah. But looking back, of course, it's this poor little girl that's just like worried about what everybody thinks about her and all of that. But I was very lucky because early on in my healing journey, I started practicing yoga. And through yoga practice, we kind of work to seek the truth. And as I progressed in my yoga practice and then eventually became a teacher, I had this natural platform to be able to share little bits as I felt comfortable. And then I saw the result of that. People didn't turn away from me in shame. They actually came to me after and said, thank you. And that's me too. And so it gave me confidence to be able to share. And I think that one of the things that we can all do for each other is provide safe spaces for other people to share their truth. So reserve judgment, get curious, and just offer like to hold space for others to share their stories. Because I think that that's, to me, disconnection is the greatest disease in society right now. And we can connect through our stories.
Yeah, I mean, my marriage, like this, we totally disconnected over the death of my father. We were all dealing with trauma differently. And it was through the sharing and holding space, but we couldn't have done it alone. We needed help. So we did reach out and we did get a therapist. And then we got curious about, okay, well, now we've done the couple thing. Okay, we get it. I got curious about, I'm like, where is this coming from? Where are these stories? Why am I the way I am? And he got curious. Why is he the way he is? And through that, now when we're listening and communicating, we're not coming from that shame, blame. We're coming from a place of curiosity. And going, okay, what is he actually trying to say? Where is this actually coming from? How, even though I don't agree or may not, why is he thinking this way? Let's like you said, let's get curious and find out, why is he saying the things that he's saying? Because I'm not understanding, but without curiosity, you'll never understand. Because
it's most of us walk around in society trying to be understood, but in all of the spiritual teachings, it will tell you, if you want to be understood, seek first to understand. If you want friendship, be a friend. If you want love, be loving. If you want grace, be gracious. And so us learning to seek to understand is the first step to healing disconnection. And one of the spiritual teachings that leads into the personal development teachings that I really like to explore is that we are just the sum total of our reactions. We don't even have personalities per se. What we have are strategies that we develop to win us love and avoid punishment as children. And then we do them, if they work, we do them over and over again. They become habits, then we call them traits. And then we're like, oh, that's my personality. It's just the way I am. But we take those strategies out of childhood and then into cohabitation with another adult who has their own strategies. And unless we get curious and examine them, it tends to go poorly. And it's when we wake up and recognize that life isn't just happening. Some people say it's happening to them. Some people say it's happening for them. I say, you're creating it. You're creating it all. We have it that life is happening to us, but we're actually creating it all. And that's so beautiful, because it means that we can wake up in any given moment and say, who do I want to be right now? how do I want to show up here? Who do I want to become? And what's the next action that I can take towards becoming that version of myself right now? So I'm actually laying the foundation of becoming a more gracious, more patient, more curious person as I go step by step.
Yeah.
And so, though, awakening is not an easy process because there is that shame and blame. We look back at all the ways we weren't that way in the past, and that can be very hard to reconcile for people. But it's such a beautiful process to step into, because you can really redefine and recreate yourself. You are not determined by your past. You could wake up today and say, I'm going to be a totally different person, and practice being that person. And a year from now, you will be.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, looking at yourself is really, really tough. I went into some really dark places. But without that, knowing where it's coming from, I don't think I would be who I am right now at this moment. And I'm still finding myself, but the reinvention, I am not the product of, my past. I am, like you said, who I choose to be today. And it's so powerful to step into that. I feel, like I said, I feel really alive right now. I've never loved myself more. I've never, set as many boundaries for myself. It's just, I don't know. I'm just really coming home, I guess, to myself. And it's a really nice place to be, but not without the work. Because
it's funny because people have this big word, enlightenment, right? Or like we get enlightened or more aware as we go on. And enlightenment isn't coming into like some piece of information we didn't have before. Enlightenment's sort of like a whole whack of things we thought were true, we recognize are not true, and they fall away. And then we're kind of left in this void where we have to do the work of actually creating ourselves. And it's often, no thorns, no roses. It's often the prickly parts in life, the difficulties that will spur us on to seek the truth and get us to the place where we go, oh, wait a minute, I'm the author, I'm the artist, I'm the creator, and I can either remain a reaction or I can take my seat as the creator of my life, and I can steer the ship the way that I want it to go. And that's what really happened for me with my son's addiction. I didn't realize that I hadn't healed from my abusive marriage, and I was living in fear, really operating from the fear of, he's going to be an addict and I've got to prevent that as I'm raising him. And when you're focused on what you don't want, the prize is that you get more of that thing, and when you argue for your limitations, the prize is that you get to keep them. Whatever we're focused on, we just kind of expand. And I'm not saying that my focus was the reason my son became an addict. There were a lot of factors. And when he was finally in addiction and it got to the point that it was sort of life-threatening, I was reactive and ridiculous, like controlling and fighting, and just like no version of myself that I would choose to be. And I remember one specific sort of wake-up call. I was about to lead a yoga workshop, and I was missing some money from my wallet. And I mean, it was pretty obvious he had to be the guy. And there was a pattern established by then. And I challenged him on it, and he really blew up in my face. And he's like, and to the point where I doubted myself. I'm like, did I not see that? Like, I'm sure that I just saw him take money out of my wallet, and he was just like really in my face. And I said, I have to go. You're making me late for my yoga workshop where I'm going to go teach people about peace and love. And he looked at me and he said, some big yoga teacher you are, you can't even have a conversation with your fucking kid. And you know what though? Like, it hurt deeply because it was the truth. And I recognized that yoga was even a place that I was hiding. And I needed to do some more healing and some more confronting of my fears and my doubts and my patterns. And it was kind of that point that I recognized, like, I don't know that I can heal him, but I sure got some work to do on myself. So I didn't take my attention off my son, but I took my attention off of trying to control him and put my attention on who I wanted to be. And that was probably the biggest shift. Just, that's the only thing that we can control.
It's ourselves and our,
100%
Yeah,
is like,
absolutely.
when you take the focus off of someone else and you put it on you, then you're like, oh, there's those aha moments where you're like, oh, I'm actually contributing a lot more than what I thought, and not in a positive way. It's true. Like you do, you're like, oh yeah, no, definitely got to look on the inside and heal those parts of myself. Cause I also come from an abusive relationship and, don't tell me what to do. I'm strong, independent. Was working for me until it was not.
That's what happens, right? It works until it doesn't.
Works until it doesn't.
Yeah. And then, going back to, you were saying about like the controlling, and you were fearful of your son becoming an addict. And then he did. I'm refocusing because I was struggling because I had an eating disorder. And I was so scared to have my children. And I'm so controlling when it comes to food. Sorry, this is a touchy subject. I'm still working on it with them. And the way I'm showing up is that I'm not showing up as the mom I want to be. I'm showing up as somebody who was with an eating disorder, had it, and so much control. Anyways,
because you're trying to
I'm trying to prevent it.
Yeah.
So I'm coming not from, I think like a normal mom piece. It's more, I was watching more. I'm starting to let that go because I don't want them ending up.
Well, you're just like most of the population. We're not aware until we are. And, there are only two energies in the world, the energy of no and the energy of yes. We have a negativity bias where our reticular activating system is trained to keep us safe. It's looking for danger. Yeah. And it's a 2-to-1 negativity bias. And our RAS is scanning the environment 4 times a second. Am I safe? Am I safe? And as a mother, are my children safe? Are my children safe? And so we basically run through life going, I don't want my kids to suffer like I did. I don't want to be humiliated. I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to be judged. I don't want to be broke. I don't. And it's kind of like we're standing in the center of this circle, looking outward with a sword drawn and saying, you know what? I don't want any of these things to happen. So I'm putting chewing gum in the dam and slaying the demons and, all of that. And at the end of the day, maybe we staved off some of those things, but we didn't have a chance to actually say, what do I want to create? What am I a yes for in this moment? And I think that is a really important piece for us as parents. I would never give parenting advice, but what I can share is from my own experience is to say, as you've heard me say in talks, that I had to ask over and over again, okay, I can feel myself doing that thing where I want to control. So what does it look like just to love him here? What does it look like just to love? And it was like moment by moment, a moment by moment choice, a moment by moment decision, over and over again until it kind of just became the way. And it might be a question for different people. Like, what does it look like to let go of control here? What does it look like to allow? What does it look like to surrender? What does it look like to relax with what is? And these kinds of questions can help us soften away from our strategies that we develop to protect, preserve, and prevent as children. Yeah. And often eating disorders, I mean, that's almost always a control. I want control over my life because something happened to me that made me feel so out of control that I'll show you that I have some.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm exploring too with my therapist, is that control of why. And going back to, childhood.
Control is directly related to the need for certainty. And when we don't feel certain, we will try to control. So the biggest control freaks and micromanagers, AKA me, recovering control freak, recovering micromanager. I see you not judging anyone. We felt that we didn't have any autonomy in some areas in our lives. And also that maybe there were some things that we were fearing that were out of our control. And there were small things like food that we could control, or other people, or how clean our house is, obsessive compulsive cleaning, those kinds of things. They tend to be because we have a higher need for certainty and we're just not getting it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So when we can recognize those things, I think those patterns, I think that we can have compassion for ourselves. And it's not like I'm broken or defective. It's just like, oh, of course, I didn't have the certainty that I needed. And the adults in my life maybe didn't have the skills to reassure me or provide that. And so of course I would have that strategy.
Yeah.
And then we can forgive. And forgiveness, as a mom, it's so hard, right? You guys know this is so hard. But
It is hard.
my spiritual teacher, Baron Baptiste, is my yoga teacher, actually. He's been my teacher for many years. And he says that forgiveness is forfeiting the right to ever make that judgment again.
I like that.
Isn't that great? Forgiveness
great.
is forfeiting the right to make that judgment again. So it's not that it doesn't happen, but you make the judgment and then you go, wait a minute. No, I gave up the right to do that next, and you move on. And that's really, it's a process. Forgiveness is a process, but it's a big part of the healing. We have to forgive ourselves for all the various ways that we screwed up our kids and that our parents screwed us up.
That we're all just screwed up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody recently told me that when it comes to forgiving ourselves, that we often fall into like guilt, and guilt is a hard emotion to reconcile with. But if we can have remorse for our actions or have remorse over something we've done, then remorse as a word is just so much easier to move forward from. And I've been reflecting on that, and I'm like, yeah, there are things that I still carry like that shame and that guilt for. But as soon as I reframe it a little bit and I think, okay, I have remorse how I acted in that moment. But like you're saying, I can see maybe things that it led to that. And then for some reason, I was like, oh, this is so much easier to forgive myself in a place of remorse than a place of guilt and shame in a way.
Well, I think the distinction for me, as you're just saying that, I'm really big on words and their meanings and all of that. And I'm wondering if remorse comes from the root word of morose, like to feel sad about something, and regretful,
Right.
like that. And here's the difference, though, like remorse would involve guilt. To me is I haven't cleaned up my mess yet. Remorse is I have regret and therefore I have cleaned up my mess or am in the process of cleaning up my mess.
Right.
And so it's like, it's complete. Whereas guilt, I think when we have guilt, there's something incomplete. We haven't owned our stuff yet. There's an apology owed somewhere.
Right.
There's something to let go of. There's some amends to make somewhere. But I think remorse is like a redirection. Like, okay, I have remorse. I feel sadness, like true sadness, not just kind of shame, like embarrassment. I feel deeply sad and regretful about this action. And I need to go and restore my integrity by cleaning up the mess I made so that I can move forward without shame.
Right. Yeah. I like that. See, it's good.
Yeah.
I know. And then my phone keeps pinging, but there was one thing I wanted to say from Pam's book that I thought was so good. Hang on. And then I'll turn it off because it's pinging. It's annoying. Hang on. I got to find it.
I forgot my phone at home today, and it's terrifying driving around without your phone, but it's also freeing.
It is freeing. I've forgotten my phone a couple times. I'm like, wow, now I can see why my mom doesn't attach herself to her phone, but she has been taken off the emergency contact list because she never picks up the phone ever.
She doesn't.
She doesn't. It's like, oh,
That's hilarious.
Did you find it?
I found it, but it's like, okay, so you said earlier about like the things that come up for us that are like the prickly things and so on. And it's always about, okay, so this one line she says is so good to me. It's like, if you want to make the most significant difference, ask yourself these questions. Can you give up making someone wrong? Who can you forgive? Who can you send love to? Who can you reach out to without judgment to let them know that you see them? It's likely the first person that comes to your mind. That one that feels prickly, that's the one, that's your teacher. That's the person who's like here to teach you something. And I love it. I just love that part.
Yeah, that was the whole point in writing the book, was just to share that my journey through all of these I mean, you read the book, my husband tried to kill me and went to prison for that. It was like fairly traumatic. And a lot of the things that we went through with my son's addiction were also traumatic, but I was pretty thick-headed and stubborn. It took that kind of trauma to wake me up, honestly. And if we can shift both things are happening. It could be terrible. If we think about both sides of the hand, it could be absolutely terrible. It was terrible living with an addict and surviving all of the things that happened with my husband. And then it was horrible watching my child go through all of this, but it was also beautiful. It was also beautiful because we all woke up through it and we were all redirected by it. And we all had to dig down into the depths of compassion and expand our ability to be with other human beings in their suffering. Like there's great beauty in that. And I think that I'm really good at being with people who are suffering without flinching, which is such a rare quality because I kept thinking to myself, who did I need? And I needed somebody who didn't say, well, have you tried rehab for your son?
Right. Oh, I know. Oh my God.
Go F yourself. That's what
you did say that in your book, like, go F yourself.
Yeah. Totally.
Like, people who kept saying, no, I haven't tried that.
And my mother's like, do you know, it's probably his friends. And I'm like, no, he's the ringleader. He's the guy, Mom. It's not his friends. And could everyone just shut up? I'm doing the best I can,
Oh my gosh.
But I look back and I'm so deeply grateful for every experience because every experience opened a facet of me and some new nuance. And it's been such a pleasure and a privilege to be able to guide people. I mean, I've trained hundreds of yoga teachers and coaches, and I facilitate all kinds of leadership development in that. And I'm able to hold space really beautifully and powerfully without taking on people's stuff, but just fully being with them and for them. And that is a beautiful space to occupy. And I think it's rare air, and if I can help others also be able to sit with the broken without flinching and trying to fix, just being, wouldn't the world be a better place?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So getting back to the quote that you brought up from the book, who can you give up making wrong? This to me is probably the greatest spiritual teaching of all. And that is that whenever we are making someone else wrong, we are doing energetic violence to them. We are protecting our rightness. My worldview is right. Yours is wrong. And therefore, you are broken. You're the one who needs to be fixed. But we're creating energetic violence every time we think about them being wrong. And if you think about, for instance, if you had a childhood friend that did something to you and you're making them wrong and you say, that's why I'm so prickly or whatever that is, they're over there on the other side of the world doing whatever they're doing. And they're completely unaffected by it.
Yeah.
But you are poisoning yourself with resentment every single day that you think about it. So wrong making is probably the most destructive activity that we can engage in as human beings. And when we can give up making someone wrong, and we do that through curiosity, as you talked about earlier, we can actually get to a new level of relationship with them, and we free ourselves from suffering. It's like holding a hot coal, waiting to throw it at your enemy, right? And you're like, I know you're so wrong. Well, you got a 3rd-degree burn on your hand.
Yeah. Such a good visual.
But it's
so
like,
true.
we did a bunch of self-development courses earlier on in our relationship. And one of those, blaming and making someone wrong and talking about, I was wasting a lot of energy on talking about my mother-in-law.
Yeah.
And every time I talked about her, it got bigger and bigger and bigger. But I didn't look at, she was oblivious. So I was taking the poison, expecting her to die.
Yeah, totally.
Because I'm poisoning myself and my thoughts and my energy, and I'm, angry inside.
And she's like,
and she has no clue.
Yeah.
So then I had to really go and do some work and acknowledge that I show up a certain way because to me, she's already that, and therefore she can be nothing else. So nothing that she brought to the table, I could accept as good. Everything had a hidden intention. Everything was like, oh, she's scheming, she's this and that, right? I had to let that go. So this was years ago, but we started kind of shifting our way of being, because again, we were directing so much energy towards, people who made us, but they had no clue.
Yeah.
Right.
I have a really hilarious story about my mother-in-law. So I've been married 3 times, but that's my second marriage. My mother-in-law, her name is Nella, and she's still my mother-in-law. I adore her. We're very close. Today's her 90th birthday.
Oh, wow.
I'm going to go visit her right after this. But the very first time that she came to our house for dinner when I was living with Rob and just about to get married, I don't know what possessed me. I was young, like 26 or something. And I thought I would make an Italian lady pasta. And so I made like linguine and clams, and I thought it was going to be just fabulous. With really not knowing much about Italian cooking other than, what I saw on TV. So I had this recipe and it was very delicious. It was quite good, but I overcooked the pasta and then served. And, I'm sitting at the table and I'm waiting for her to tell me that it's good.
Yeah.
and she's not saying anything. And I'm young and insecure and I want her approval.
Right.
And I said, so Nella, did you like the pasta? And she goes, well, Pamela, no, really, it's not my favorite. And I was like, okay, this is how ridiculous I was and so prickly and scarred from my first marriage, because this is what came out of my mouth, you guys, and it's so embarrassing to say it. I said, my mom says, if you don't have anything nice to say, you shouldn't say anything at all. Every time I say that, I'm still embarrassed about it. And she taught me the greatest lesson in the world right then. She said, Pamela, if I tell you I like, you're gonna make a gang. Yeah. She just told the truth.
Yeah.
And I couldn't handle it.
Right.
I made it personal, all of that stuff. All of the prickly people come to wake us up, to confront ourselves and all the BS we make up. The stories we make up about what it all means. None of it means anything. No one's thinking about you. They're thinking about them.
That's what I always said. For years, we've been saying, stories come back that, so-and-so said this, so-and-so said. I'm like, really, I feel sorry for them because they're spending a lot of energy thinking about me, but you're like spending zero energy thinking of them. Yeah. So their opinions have zero effect on my life and my family's life. So go ahead, chat, do whatever, but you have zero power over me and my family. So that's kind of the rule we've been living by many years.
Well, and you guys will discover this. You're doing really great with your podcast. I love it. I've been listening to you guys. I love your sharing on social media. I love how authentic you guys are, which is actually why I wanted to connect with you, because I'm really passionate about living authentically and being totally real, because I think that does connect us all. And as you get bigger, as you expand, what happens? People throw rocks up.
Right.
And what I've had to learn is that if you're not pissing people off, you're probably not doing anything worthwhile. Yeah.
I like that.
And honestly, the bigger you become, the more of a target you are. And that's great because you're kind of weeding out who your people are, who your followers are. And when you're triggering people, you might be the ones who are throwing rocks up at you. Yeah. They might, your prickle of them might be something that redirects their path by a 1 degree right now, but it changes the trajectory of their life at some point. And so it's just like kind of part of the deal as you do bigger work in the world, that you have to recognize that people don't throw rocks down.
No.
They throw them up. And so if they're throwing rocks, you're like, right on, brother.
Yeah. Bring it.
As long as they're pebbles for now.
Bring it. I feel like you're a bit of a badass. I like it. And then like the way you're like, bring it and all that. But also like, I keep thinking about how like you were chased by freaking gangsters. Like, and when you're like describing driving over that like bridge, being chased by gangsters, I thought, man, she is a badass. Like you're just tough. Like,
So do
I
you
said
have to
street cred, but
Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, you've gone through a lot, and you just seem like such a knowledgeable, and I don't know what the right word is. Wise. Like, yeah. Like, and I think what you're saying about the surrender makes so much sense. Like, you just surrendered to control. You surrendered to, like, this is the way it is. I can't control people. And I can't control what's happening when I'm being chased by freaking gangsters.
You know, if I'm thoroughly honest about that, I don't know that I allowed myself to feel the amount of fear that I should have felt. At that time, these guys, the police came to me and said, you know, I thought they were going to tell me my son was going to jail for something, and they said, no, he's ripped off some really dangerous people, and these are the kind of people that will come after his family to pay him back. And I was like, doesn't that just happen in the movies?
Yeah.
Like, I actually just felt that way. And I think there was some part of me that compartmentalized it and kind of shut it off a little bit. And I had to be followed by undercover officers for a while until these guys, gentlemen, I'll use the term loosely, left town. But I don't think I allowed myself to feel the fear, like that these guys could really come and hurt me, until my friend, a friend that I grew up with, he had been kind of involved in a life like that. And he said, maybe you should sleep in the basement in case there's machine gun fire in front of your house, you'll be protected. And I was like, what are you talking about? But like, that doesn't happen. What are you and he said, no, and you should probably have Brandon go stay at his dad's, and you should. And I was like, what? I didn't even understand. I couldn't comprehend. And so I was in this oblivion, but afterwards, after you're saying I'm so tough, but afterwards, when these guys went home and they were from Dawson Creek, and things kind of got back to normal, I remember going for a walk and my legs turned to spaghetti and my hands started to shake, and I had this just this whole body shake, and I just sobbed because I realized like somebody could have died.
Right.
Not just me, somebody, anybody in my family, and how everything had been altered. But that too is an experience that I'm grateful for, because I have insight. I feel like I've been gifted all of these experiences because I really have no judgment for anybody going through whatever they're going through. Nothing shocks me. And so that's part of how I can sit with other people with whatever they're going through. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
And what do you need from me?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it did sort of seem like a movie. And that, I think, was the part that got me, was I was like, shit, this is like Kelowna, right? You're driving on the bridge. You're talking about people shooting a house. I was just like, oh my God, it suddenly made it so, because people talk about crime and how Kelowna has a lot of it. And I was like, holy shit, this is real life.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I had come down the stairs of the yoga studio I was at, and the officers had told me the kinds of cars that these guys drove and to keep my eye out for them. And I saw them and I was like, well, everyone has it. I'm just talking to myself like, it's you're making a big deal, Pam. But when they were actually coming for me across the bridge, like following me and cutting me off in traffic, and I was like, I might die today. Like I might, this is not good. And I was so grateful and blessed to be, I believe it or not, I turned down a road to find I went to high school with a guy who was affiliated, let's say, with some people that would be able to protect me in that situation. And I thought to myself, he's a block away, I can go there. And as I was on the way there, thank God the universe is smarter than me and more generous, because now looking back, I'm like, he was probably involved in that in some way. Who knows? But there was a police officer just sitting on the side of the road, and I ran out like a maniac and banged on the door, and he knew who I was because they'd been following all of this. So I was, I feel like that was divine intervention. Yeah. And
I feel like I've had a few of those, because I still am pretty naive when it comes to certain things, or maybe I'm just not allowing that energy to come in, because even when I was in New York, we were talking with this lady and with this girl, and she's like, oh, I'm so scared because there's so much crime, and, you know, I don't wear this type of jewelry. I don't, because I'm going to get attacked. And she's fairly young, and I'm just like, wow, she's living in constant fear. And I think for me, I'm just not allowing that. So then I'm like, okay, well, the universe is just gonna like, no, you gotta be smart a little bit, you know, because you can't leave everything to the universe.
Yeah,
Right?
right.
Well, sometimes the universe is just checking to see if we're still dumb.
Yeah,
So
yeah, right. So,
Are you awake now?
Are you awake, right? But it's just like, yes, like, you know, I've been put into many situations actually where it could have gone horribly wrong. But again, I didn't allow that fear or that thought to come in, how bad it could have been, because then I feel like I think a little bit more clear. I'm not basing it on like that fear and hide piece. Maybe I should, because like sometimes you should be hiding, not being out there. But
yeah, no, my husband tells me that sometimes I'm naive, and I say, actually, I don't think I'm naive. I choose to put my attention on the good in the world, and I choose to put my attention on what I want to have happen in my life, and I choose to put my attention and energy on what I can cause and create. Because here's a great metaphor for this. So my first husband, Steve, was he's passed away now. He drank himself to death in a hotel room, and he was driving to work when we lived in Revelstoke after drinking a 40-pounder of vodka. Just driving, you know, down the highway like people do. And he got in it. He rolled over the truck, and he didn't have a seatbelt on, and he got thrown 100 meters from the vehicle. When I got the call, I thought, oh my gosh, he's going to be a vegetable or dead. And because of the situation in our marriage, I actually was feeling almost relieved by that. And when he got to the hospital, all he had was road rash because he wasn't bracing. You know, when you brace for bad things to happen, it doesn't prevent the bad thing from happening.
It just hurts.
But you prevent joy right now. And it often is more injurious. It causes more injury when that impact does happen. So I choose to kind of take that metaphor and say, like, if something bad's going to happen, I could have spent the last year bracing for it, which I did with my son's addiction. I braced for it. Well, it sure didn't make it any easier, but it robbed me of a lot of joy in his childhood. And so, yeah, I think like I'm going to hang on to my little bit of naivety, perhaps, and my positive outlook on the world, because I'm not going to gain a day in my life from worrying about what could happen, but I will certainly rob myself of joy right now. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Like, that's how I, So.
Oh, yeah. I don't even know where to go next.
So tell us a little bit more about your coaching. Like, because yoga, teacher, guru,
That's well, guru means slayer of darkness, and so I guess in some respects we all are. You know, we all are. But I started teaching yoga 25 years ago, and probably long before I should have been teaching, to be honest. But what I realized was my healing journey through yoga really. It was what led me to all of this work and to heal myself, and asking the right questions and being surrounded by people who helped me seek the truth. But I recognized that only 8% of the population does yoga. And I was like, how can I get this work out to other people in the world? So I started studying, more personal development, leadership, coaching, and took pretty much every certification out there, worked with all the big ones. And what was really interesting to me was actually, it was all there in yoga all along. Universal truth is universal truth, but it gave me another language so that I could actually serve people who would maybe never step on a yoga mat and help their families. And I believe that if every family gets one person that's doing the healing work and seeking personal development, then they become the catalyst for the healing of that whole family. And so I really just wanted to be able to help and to serve more people. Now, I tend to think in terms of expansion for myself all the time. So when I started teaching yoga, that was great. But then I wanted to have a yoga studio, and I didn't really love some of the products of certain teacher trainings that were out there at the time. People were scared and timid, and I was like, I want confident, bold teachers. Well, I guess I'm going to have to be the one to train them. So I created a teacher training, which is now one of the highest rated teacher training schools in Canada, and trained all the teachers. And then I expanded my studio, and then I started coaching just one-on-one. And I was like, well, I can only talk to one person at a time. And what if I created group coaching scenarios? Okay, well, that's great. And then, well, what if I trained more people like me that could go out and then train more people in the world and make a bigger impact? And I just keep thinking about, it's my responsibility to share this medicine with the world. And if I play small, then I'm doing a disservice to the world. So it's everything I do has kind of been this natural expansion from the healing work that I did. Even writing a book was just part of that expansion. It's all the same thing. I just have different language. So now I certify coaches. I have a 200-hour coaching certification. I still train yoga teachers. I offer, limited one-on-one coaching, which is expensive now because there's only so much of me.
Yeah, fair.
And then group coaching programs, which I love because I can kind of empower and inspire a lot of people at once to really take hold of their lives and seek the truth of their power and their miraculous nature and their limitlessness. Nothing makes my heart happier than seeing people exceed themselves in some way and keep blowing their own minds as to who they can be in the world. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. That's where we're at now, baby.
Blowing out
their minds.
Yeah. Well,
cool.
I really love, and I want to say, I love the way you're sharing your journey authentically on Instagram. And when we've been in conversation, like just how authentic and real you guys are. And I really have to acknowledge that, you guys know it's actually rare. It's actually rare. Most people, if they're honest with themselves, are managing other people's perceptions of them. 100%. And it really takes balls to do what you guys are doing.
Thank you.
It takes courage. Yeah. And I acknowledge that, and I really honor that. And you guys are the kind of people I like to ride with because it's, it can be lonely to do that sometimes.
It can. Yeah, for sure. And it's hard, like you're saying, in those moments where you want to sort of push down. Like there has been times, like the other day I showed up on Instagram and I was talking about how I was out at a networking thing and I really wanted to drink and I was upset about it. And I thought, I don't want to share this. And then I thought, wait, people are watching what I'm doing because they want to know not just the good, successful things, but they want to know when it's fucking hard.
Yeah.
And so I showed up and then cried and whatever. And people responded to so much. So many people messaged. And I thought, okay, if I'm helping even one person in their struggle and their journey, then I'm doing my job of being authentic in this process. And then it felt good.
Oh, it was so good. It moved me. I was like, wow, that's real. That's relatable. And I said, like, that's going to help somebody. And you won't even know the person that it helped so much. But isn't it beautiful to know that, you put it out there? And so many people in this kind of world are worried about going viral and putting out content that, is going to, 100,000 people will see it. I couldn't give a fuck about that. I'm like, if I say something that helps one person, because it was really one person that said one thing to me when my teacher said, if not you, then who?
Yeah.
And if not now, then when? It was that one thing that changed my life. And if something I say helps one person, it's worth every bit of effort because we never know the thing we're going to say that's going to heal others. But I'll tell you what won't heal: fakery, hiding behind stuff, pretending it's all sunshine and great. Sobriety's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard. My kid lives in a sober living community and you know what? He loves it and his girlfriend loves it. And there's hard days and you need support and it's a challenge and people need to know that.
Yeah.
You know, healing is hard. It's messy and it's ugly and we don't do it right all the time. And we blame.
And it could be lonely too. Cause like we've always had this persona, our relationship with me and my husband. And I had him on this pedestal. He's my knight in shining armor of what he did 17 years ago. with my mother-in-law. You know, he chose me. And then, you know, with my dad's passing, the disconnection that happened, I felt so alone because I'm like, my marriage is not what I say it is. Right. And there was no relatedness to me within my girlfriends because they were having marriage problems. So they're like, oh, we can't talk to you because your marriage is perfect. My marriage is not perfect, but because people put so much attention on how perfect we seem to be, it was kind of my mission not to burst that bubble. So I suffered alone for a long time, and it's a shitty place to be. Once I started sharing with some of my girlfriends, I'm like, frick, this is happening. I don't know. You know, this is not perfect. The healing that started just with the sharing. And then that relatedness, and like, oh my gosh, you are one of us.
Yes.
you are
freeing,
one of us.
right?
It's
Like,
freeing when you're like, you know what? I'm in a freaking mess right now, and I need help. I can't do this. And actually, for someone who's strong, independent, I don't need nobody telling me what to do.
It's really
hard
It's really tough to ask for help.
Yeah. Or even just to admit that we don't know the answer. We don't know what to do.
Yeah.
I recall going to, it was a time, my son's been to rehab 13 times. So it was one of the times that he was home with me waiting for like a month before he could get in. And it was always a disaster because he's using heroin and he's just a jerk, you know, and all the things.
Yeah.
And I get to the yoga studio and all my students are waiting there. And one of the women said, "Are you okay today?" And I said, "Actually, no. I just spent the morning trying not to punch my kid in the face." and I was successful, but it was close.
Yeah.
And you know what? Everyone said like, oh, that's what makes you real. That's like, we've all felt that way. And our kids aren't even doing what your kid's doing, you know? And the more raw and real we are, the more we give permission for other people to do the same. And again, it comes back to what we were talking about at the beginning. If you want to be a friend, then if you want friends, be friendly. If you want grace, be gracious. If you want authenticity in the world, you have to be authentic. And then we hold the space by being authentic for others to step into. We become a place where authentic people can belong, you know?
Yeah.
And then it's not so lonely.
Yes. Well, that's how this podcast started too, is because we were sitting around a fire pit on my deck, and we just started sharing like some of the struggles of motherhood and that, you know, what you're going through, and just it's like, holy man, okay, well, this is what my kid did. This is whatever. It does get better. We went through that. And we're just like this community feeling like you belong and that you have a safe space to share without judgment. Because we're all, like, you know, you said you wanted to punch your kid in the face. I'm like, yeah, sometimes I'm just like, fuck, I have 2 twins, you know, 2 for 1. Like maybe I could sell one. Nobody will notice. I can Photoshop them in.
I always say you're not a real parent until you've mouthed "fuck you" behind your kid's back when they're walking away.
Oh, you're like, fuck you. Well, I think once my kid was like, "What did you mouth?" I was like, "Nothing."
So it's just that, you know, stepping into, and because of social media, it's become so much more perfect, and the expectations.
Yeah, but none of it's real.
It's all fake.
And you guys, we really, I love that you guys are debunking that. And that's my goal in life too, is to debunk that. None of it's real.
Yeah.
You know, the guys that are like, if you want to drive a Lamborghini, you can then have an 8-figure business and blah, blah. It's not even real. Did anyone even check? Does that guy even own a Lamborghini?
Yeah.
Probably not. Like, it's not real. And these people are struggling, and they have insecurities, and they have relationship problems, and they have doubts and fears like everyone else. And I'm not inspired by your Lamborghini, sir. I'm inspired by your courage to tell the truth.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I'm inspired by people who are willing to bear it all to help others.
Yes.
And I love that you guys are doing that. Yeah.
Oh, well, thanks. You too.
Well, thank
You're
you. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
Bearing it all. Badass. Street fighting. Like we should totally do something. A photo shoot.
Badass photo shoot.
Badass photo shoot. You're the leader.
Yeah.
I'll be the ringleader.
You'll be the All right. Well, it's time now.
Oh, yeah. We usually do our fire rapid questions. At the end.
Okay.
It's just like, about parenting, but I feel like you maybe answered.
I've got 4 kids, so I have been a parent,
You've been there. I mean, okay. So one of the questions, but I feel like you maybe answered this, but if you could go back and tell like young pre-mother Pam a piece of advice, what would you give yourself?
Don't be so tough. Ask for help.
Right.
You don't know everything, and you don't need to know everything.
Yeah.
Ask for help. Yeah.
Right. That's a big one. Yes. Ask for help. I learned to ask.
Yeah.
And it's amazing.
Yeah. We're meant to live in community. We're meant to live in a tribe. And it's not expected that the youth should know what the elders know. That's why the elders exist, to share their wisdom. But the youth are so, dumb. I know. So I would tell myself, ask for help.
Right. How do you think, I'm just thinking of this question off the top of my head, but like, how did your parenting change? Like, as you had more and more kids, or as this is like so many questions in one, but as your oldest son got deeper and deeper into addiction, like, did that change your parenting with your other kids in any way? Or
so I had a unique situation in that I collected 2 wonderful stepsons. So I married Robin. My son Nick was about 3 when we got married, I think, and Mirko was 7 and Silvana was 5. And then we had Brandon together. So they were 12, 10, and 6 when Brandon was born. So Mirko and Silvana were almost grown up, but I had to integrate step parenting at a young age, which was its whole own challenge. And then they were great kids, but it was my insecurities that caused that challenge. And then once they were kind of moved out and Rob and I split up, then Nick was getting into his addiction. Poor Brandon, my youngest, he pretty much parented himself for a while because Nick consumed so much of my attention. And he turned out to be a really independent, really hardworking, really successful, very likable, easygoing. And I look and I think, I didn't even raise him. I had nothing to do with him. But once Nick was fully out of the house and Brandon was 16 years old, that's when I quit my real job to just own a yoga studio, because I thought I owed him. I was like, you get to have your mom all to yourself now. And so how it changed my parenting was, I was like, I know Nick's addiction robbed him of a lot of his life, and it robbed me of some, but it robbed you of your mom for a long time. And so I would just call the school and say he has a dentist appointment and totally lie and go pick him up and take him to Tim Hortons. I was like, you're not in medical school. It's fine. And I was at home. I had my yoga studio in my home at the time. And so I was there every day, and I baked muffins and I drove him places, and we had great talks, and I reestablished a deep bond with him. Not that we didn't have a bond, but I felt guilt, the mother's guilt for not having been there. So it made me realize the preciousness of this special time that I had when Brandon was almost like an only child from 16 to 18,
Right.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. So, I'm close with all of my sons now, but it was a concerted effort to sort of make up for lost time.
I feel like I'm going to have to make up some time, because with twins, everything we do together. And it's those rare occasions that I have one-on-one time with them. It's just because Lee works out of town for now. December is the last day, so yay. We don't have that one-on-one, and when we do, it's so special, because I'm like, oh my gosh, there was a realization a couple of months ago. I'm like, I don't actually know my children. I know them together. I don't know them alone. And so, our pillow talks, because now they sleep one with me, one with my mom, when Lee's gone. So that's the time that we establish a connection. Yeah. So,
yeah. Okay. Well, where can people find you if they want to look for you?
PamRader.com, Shift Power Yoga.
Okay.
Shift Labs, but on Instagram, Pam Rader, at Pam Rader. And then I got a link tree. They can hit up everything from there.
Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your story. And
thanks for having me. It was really fun. chatting with you ladies.
Yeah, thank you.
I love the work you're doing in the world. And I think you guys should be celebrated. And I'll be cheering for you as you grow this to a massive podcast.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks.
Right back at you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay, till next time. Bye. We hope you enjoyed today's episode and that you feel more empowered, moved, and inspired.
Be sure to check out the show's description and follow us on social media at Let's Not Sugarcoat It Podcast on both Instagram and Facebook.
Also, check out our YouTube channel where you can view and subscribe to our latest episodes.
What you have to say matters, so send us your feedback and ideas on what you'd like us to talk about so we can serve you better.
And remember, motherhood is a team sport.